This conference will now be recorded.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to week 3 of effective copywriting. This is a busy week because we're going to learn about writing taglines, and we're going to revise our testimonial ads from week 2. For those of you that got the ads in, you got feedback today. So what you're going to do is now do the next round of revisions as if you were going to present them to the client. We'll talk more about that in a minute. I want to talk a little bit about taglines because this week we're going to be creating taglines. And George Felton, our textbook author, says a tagline or a slogan is basically the essence of a campaign or the brand or a company. So the tagline kind of gives you a hint as to what the brand is about. So some examples of taglines from the past are American Express's "Don't Leave Home Without It," Disney World's "The Happiest Place on Earth." Back in the old days when Dunkin' Donuts just made donuts, it was time to make the donuts, and they had a spokesperson with the little baker guy. Magically Delicious is still being used by Lucky Charms, and I remember that one from when I was a kid. So that is a tried and true tagline. So that's kind of what we're going to be working on this week, is coming up with taglines for our nonprofit organizations. So what you want to think about taglines doing, they're these little chunks of words that people carry around in their head, little pieces of persuasion that kind of resonate with the target audience. So when I say Nike, you immediately think just do it. So this week you're going to be tasked with creating 10 taglines for your nonprofit organization. And you're going to write, of course, strong rationales in support of each tagline that you write. I give you a bunch of resources to help you write taglines. But first, we want to think about how you can go about thinking about writing a tagline. So one thing you can think about is elevating the product or the service. I'm going to use those interchangeably because taglines work for products as well as they work for nonprofit organizations. So you want to look at your nonprofit's benefits, not the features, because every product, service, company out there has features. It's the benefits that separate them from the pack. So you want to think about the best benefit that separates your nonprofit organization from, say, the rest of the other animal organizations out there, and build your tagline around that. Another way to think about it is through differentiation. Something separates your children's charity from the others. So if you do like a SWOT analysis on your organization, you can zero in on the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats that your nonprofit encounters. So you can look at what the opportunities are or what their strengths are and use that to form a tagline. The pork board came up with a tagline when they were leaning it up against something else. So back in, I think it was the late 80s, when Oprah Winfrey on her talk show made a big to-do about the beef organization and she was never going to eat beef again. The pork board jumped on the opportunity, and they basically leaned their pork products up against the benefits of chicken by calling pork the other white meat because it's not beef. So they leaned it up against the benefits. What you want to think about are some creative writing techniques that you could possibly use, like parallelism. And I always use the Survivor tagline from the TV show because they do a really good job of talking about parallelism in terms of syllabic, where all the words have the same syllables. So the tagline for Survivor is outwit, outlast, and outplay. So parallelism has those sentence elements in it that are identical in thought and identical in grammatical form and kind of identical in sound. So everything kind of coincides. So outwit, outlast, outplay, each word has 2 syllables. Each word begins with O, so there's alliteration going on, and it uses the power of 3. There's something about the number 3 that people kind of relate to. So thinking about a tagline in terms of 3 words can be really strong. You can look at the opposite of what your product is. So Purdue Chicken used to say it takes a tough man to make a tender chicken, and they were using the benefit of their tender chicken and kind of making a joke about the original Frank Purdue, who was this little tiny guy. Metaphors or similes, those are poetic forms that when you're using a metaphor, you're thinking of one thing in terms of another, and a simile uses like or as. So Chevy Trucks has a tagline for their trucks where they say they're like a rock. They're so tough, they're like a rock. So some tips when you're coming up with taglines is you want to keep them short and they're memorable. Nike is just do it. They don't say just do it every time you work out. They say just do it. It's short, it's sweet, it's memorable. If your company name is not descriptive of what they do, then your tagline should. For example, there is a charity out there called Kaboom, and if I didn't tell you it was a children's play charity, you might not know that. So for Kaboom, it would benefit them to have a tagline that talks about them being a children's play charity. Once you decide on a tagline, since it is the essence of your brand, it should be used consistently. It should be unique to your business and it needs to avoid cliches. So you want to stay away from the obvious. So always push yourself further. And it should be true since it's the essence of your brand. Now, this is my pet peeve. I hate make a difference. I see make a difference and I hear make a difference everywhere. It is so overused for every nonprofit. I get it. You want to make a difference. I challenge you to go beyond make a difference. I don't want to see any taglines in your workshop this week that say make a difference. I will literally take off 10 points if I see these 3 words, make a difference. It's just tired and overused. So as copywriters, you need to push past the obvious and the cliche and find new ways of saying things. So push past the make a difference and come up with something new. Okay, some resources that you have are what's included with the assignment as the PDF attachments. TaglineGuru.com is a really great website that has a lot of resources on it. Your own textbook, Advertising Concept and Copy, has a whole section on creating taglines. And go back and look at the ads you pulled for your week 1 assignments and see how taglines are being used in those assignments. So let's take a quick look at the assignment. Okay, so what you're doing this week, I give you some background material. This is a book called The Presentation Secrets of Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs was very well known for coming up with basically these little tiny headlines that would just capture the essence of everything. So he can say, iPod, 1,000 songs in your pocket, and it just grabs you. You know what it is. So I just give you some background on that. I kind of abstracted the book for you. So there's that resource. Plus you have the Felton text. You have types of taglines at taglineguru.com. There's PDFs entitled "What is a Tagline?" The Lost Art of Writing the Sticky Tagline, and Wag the Tagline, and how to create slogans and themes in advertising and concept and copy. So all of these things you have at your fingertips because you will be writing 10 taglines for your nonprofit organization. Your initial post is due Friday at 11:59 p.m. So you're going to number your taglines 1 through 10, write your taglines, and then write 10 rationales for in defense of each tagline. So when you have your taglines in the discussion board numbered 1 through 10, underneath each tagline should be a rationale explaining why the tagline works. How is it the essence of the brand? How is it the essence of the campaign? Use the supplied resources to support the claims that you are making. So if you're saying, it works because of this, then use the resource to back up the claim that you are making. Again, I'm going to stress this every single week. I can't say it enough because it's going to be expected of you in every single class and every piece of writing that you do moving forward. You need to support your rationales with research. So by Friday, you want 10 taglines and 10 rationales up in the discussion board. Then on Sunday, you're going to come back and you're going to workshop 3 of your classmates' taglines. You're going to choose 3 of their taglines that work and 3 that don't work and explain why. So talk about something positive that's working and then talk about like what's not working with the tagline. Again, use your research to back up the claims you are making. And you must workshop 3 of your classmates' posts. And with each of your 3 classmates, you need to choose 3 of their taglines that work and 3 of their taglines that don't work and explain why each one works or does not work. Okay, so the power of threes is also working in the assignment. Okay, Friday and Sunday for that assignment. Okay. So the other assignment that opens this week but is not due until Sunday of week 4 is your campaign research paper. And this is the place where you're going to actually kind of map out your client pitch for your campaign that you are creating for your nonprofit organization. So with this assignment, it's all up there in the discussion board, in the assignment. You can get started on it this week. I highly recommend you do that once you get your tagline assignment done and your ads revised. Start mapping out your paper and use these bullet points to help guide your writing. The introduction should include the nonprofit organization's name, what the problem statement is, what is it that you're doing? And remember, we talked about this last week, that with nonprofits, you're usually trying to raise money through advertising or you're trying to raise awareness so that you eventually raise money. The last part of your introduction should be your thesis statement, and that's a statement or a theory that basically operates as the backbone of your paper. So it's what you're trying to prove, and this should be tied into your problem statement. The next part of the paper is the body of the paper, and you should use these bullet points to guide your writing for this section. So you want to give specific details on the company. What's their history? Who started it? Why did it start? When did it start? What differentiates your nonprofit organization from the competition? Now remember, in week 1, in the Settle and Alric 15 catalog of needs, we found ads that represent our competition and talked about them. So that research is already there. You want to specify the nonprofit's target audience, who the campaign is going to be directed at. Again, that research is done because you worked on that in week 2, and I'll be grading the Personas project and getting that back to you this week. Then you want to describe the voice and tone of the campaign. In what way does the voice and tone speak to the nonprofit's target audience? Remember, you just did all this research in week 1 on a paper for voice and tone, and we gave you specific resources to use for that. Specifically, the Felton textbook has an entire chapter on voice and tone. So use that to write about the voice and tone for your campaign. Then you want to end this part of the body of the paper with why this problem is worth solving, what's important about it. Then the second half of the body of the paper is guided by these bullet points. What media do you plan on incorporating into the campaign? Now this is important. We're doing magazine print ads. That's what you've been designing and working on, and that's what you're going to be revising this week. But now you're pitching this idea of a campaign to a client. So in your research paper, I want you to explore other media choices that you could pitch to the client. Maybe you're thinking about doing a television public service announcement. Maybe you're going to create a YouTube channel. Maybe you're going to create a social media marketing campaign that coincides with the magazine testimonials. So explain what other media, what else is going to make up your media plan in this part of the paper. Then you're going to talk about the specific design decisions. Remember, when you're talking about your media plan, you want to tie in your target audience. Young people ingest media differently than older people. Older people are going to gravitate towards print. They might do a little online stuff. They might do some social media stuff. But what is an 18-year-old? How do you get the raise awareness with an 18 to 24-year-old? So if you're thinking about your media plan, you have to be thinking about your target audience. And this helps you explore your design decisions that you're creating for your magazine print ads and any other media you may be creating in the future. So you want to use, if you go in the About section of FSO, there's some resources for you to use to help you with your design decisions. There's a really cool website called colormatters.com. It's listed on the resources for your research paper PDF under the About section, and it goes into the psychology of color. So that's a really good website to explore to use as a research component for this paper. But we also want you to go to the library. So we want you to gather some secondary sources from the library. So you're going to go into Full Sail 1 and click on the library page, and then go down under their About section. And in the About section, you'll find the link to the scholarly databases, which include EBSCOhost and Academic Search Premier and Business Search Premier. You want to make sure that any sources you're finding relate to your topic in more than a vague way. You don't want to, if you're doing an animal charity, you don't want to just search for research on animals. Maybe you want to research fundraising for animal charities, or you want to explore getting younger people to donate money to nonprofits. But every piece of research you look at, you need to be able to answer this question. Will this resource help answer my research question? Your research question is that problem statement and that thesis statement. That's the backbone of your paper. So these sources should support the argument that you are making through your paper. So if you answered yes, that these do support your argument, then you want to make sure that the source is authoritative, that the author is an expert in the field, that the source is current. You don't want to use outdated resources. You want to make sure that the source itself is supporting its argument. So check out their works cited page or their reference page. That's a really good way to find more research. It's like a little breadcrumb trail. If you find a really good piece of research in the library, go look at their bibliography or works cited or reference page and see what they used, and you can use those too. You want to make sure that the piece is balanced in tone, that it's not an opinion piece. So what you want to do is you want to avoid things that are coming from questionable websites. Usually like .coms are trying to sell you something. So those are commercial sites. So you don't want to be doing your research just on the web. You want to be in the library. You want to make sure that the resources you are using do not make unsubstantiated claims, that they are supporting their arguments with research. So for this paper, since it's a 5 to 7 page paper about the campaign that you are creating for your nonprofit organization, it needs to be 5 to 7 pages and include 5 to 7 secondary sources. Now, the Felton textbook is one of your sources. You wrote about voice and tone, so there's a source or two. You wrote about Settle and Aurick's 15 catalog of needs and the psychology of advertising, so there's another resource. You did research on your target audience, so there's already 4 of your sources. So go to the library and find, 1 or 2 more to help support your argument. And it all has to be formatted in proper APA style. And just to remind you, I told you about this in week 1. Go into the Microsoft Word program and go under Open from Template and use the APA template to create your paper for the week 4 assignment that's due. You want to just use the template, and that way everything's in the right place. You want to delete the table of contents and anything that comes after the reference page in the template, because we don't need all that, because this is a short paper. You will need an abstract for this paper. So your title page should be page 1. Your abstract is going to be page 2. The paper itself is going to start on page 3. And remember, the paper on page 3 starts with the title of the paper centered. Then you go into the introduction. Then once you're done with the paper and you write your conclusion, the last page, starting on a new page, would be your references, and they should be in alphabetical order. A lot of times you have all these references and people forget to go back in and alphabetize them. Remember that if the line of the reference goes longer than 1 line, you must indent the second and subsequent lines. And remember, the author's names are inverted, so it's last name, first name. Now, this is something I may have pointed out in the week 1 research paper. I gave everybody back their research papers and embedded comments in the paper pointing out where you might have issues with, say, APA style or in-text citations. Maybe you were just plopping in quotes willy-nilly. It's really important that you introduce a quote and you use an action verb. There is a list of action verbs under the About section of FSO. I have that exact list hanging over my desk, so when I write I always have that list available. So you want to introduce the quote, use the author's name, use the title of the article if you want. Just don't plop in a quote. Don't start a paragraph with a quote and don't end a paragraph with a quote, because every sentence after a quote should be in your own words explaining how that quote supports the argument that you are trying to prove. So if you think about it, if you have 5 secondary sources and you're using one sentence to introduce the quote, then you're giving me the quote, then you're writing the sentence after the quote as your reason why you're using the quote, how it supports your argument. You have 15 sentences written for your 5 sources. So there you go. That'll help you get to your 5 to 7 pages. This is the list of action verbs that I include in the About section of FSO, so you should download that and keep it handy. Okay, so the last thing we're working on this week is the testimonial ad revisions. You're going to get comments back from me, and I looked at your sketches first, and I read your rationales to see if I understood your concepts. Then I looked at your comps and gave you feedback on how to change them. So let's look at some examples of how ads can change. Okay. So this was an ad done by a student for the Coalition to Stop Gun Violence. And when the student gave it to me, we talked on the phone actually, and I said, I don't understand this ad. I said, first of all, I can't get past this woman in the really bad hat. I don't understand the bad hat. I just can't get past the hat. Plus, she's holding an automatic rifle. Why is this woman in a bad hat standing there on a playground with an assault rifle? I don't get what you're trying to say. I get the headline, has it really come to this, but I don't understand the context. So what is it that you're trying to prove? He says, well, what I'm trying to prove is that she wants to make sure the playgrounds are safe for her children. I said, well, how does Coalition to Stop Gun Violence help her do that? So when he revised this ad, the lady with the bad hat went away, and suddenly it became this ad. And suddenly there was the mom sitting on the steps with a smile on her face saying that I can smile now because the Coalition to Stop Gun Violence helped give her neighborhood the support they needed to make the playground safe for all the children. So I may have said something to you like, this concept doesn't make sense. Let's push it further. And this is an example of how an ugly ad can turn into a really strong ad that works. You can see that you can hear the woman's voice and tone through her story and the headline. You can see how the mission statement of the nonprofit organization is revealed in the body copy. And then there's a call to action that includes a tagline, imagine a future free from gun violence, and a phone number and a website that you can get information for. The second ad that this student did for Coalition to Stop Gun Violence used personification of the gun. And so I looked at this ad and I'm like, no, I cannot tell who has a mental illness because they're two guns and they're sort of pointed at each other, but I don't know. How does a gun have mental illness? I'm not sure what you're trying to do. So he explains to me about how he wants to personify the gun and hear the point of view coming from the gun. I said, well, then the gun has to speak. So let's think about this. So then he revised the ad, and the ad actually came through the voice of the gun. So what have I done? I'm the it's in it's the manifestation of the Second Amendment. I'm shrouded in irresponsibility, blah, 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 blah. When will they learn? Imagine a future free from gun violence, and a call to action, including the phone number and the website. So this is the gun reflecting back on what it did and how it needs to be controlled. So I thought that was a really good way, where the first concept didn't really make sense when he thought about how the gun would have regrets after being used in an irresponsible way. He put it in the voice and tone of the gun, and that kind of reiterated the mission statement of the nonprofit organization. All of you, I told you that what you want to do when you revise your ads is give them a consistent branded look. So here's some examples from the Pasadena Humane Society and SPCA. They're really great. All their ads have this branded look. They have the logo on it. The ads look the same. The content is different, but it has the same look and feel. It really reflects the voice of the brand. It comes through. They're all about, making sure that these pets get adopted. Here's another example for the sweet potato board. They did a fun campaign about orange and how it predicts the future. It powers potential and it builds bodies. So they did this campaign where this cohesively branded look ran across this ad series. Sometimes an ad series may run in the same publication, like all 3 ads may run in 1 month's issue of a publication. The ads could also run in rotation. So if you have, like, say, an annual contract with a magazine, maybe every month a different ad appears and they're in rotation. So each ad would appear every month. One ad would appear every month, and they trade them out each year. This was a campaign done by a student for City Harvest, and she based the campaign on the imperfect food and how even though this orange and this tomato and this lime doesn't look good, it's imperfect looking, it's perfectly nutritious. So this ad had a cohesive branded look to it. This was a fun campaign by a clothing store called Seven Sun, and they were creating a campaign based on the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s, and created a cohesively branded campaign that reflects the fashions from each decade. So that's kind of what you're working on this week. You're going to do the revisions to your 3 testimonial ads, making them into a cohesively branded campaign, and turn that in by Sunday at 11:59 p.m. You should get started on the campaign research paper. It's not due till week 4, but you really should get started on it now. At least read over the outline that I provide in the assignment there with all the writing prompts so that you know as you're starting to do your research, you're reading with intention because you know what you have to write about. Then your tagline workshop this week is due on Friday. You have to have 10 taglines and 10 rationales in the discussion board by Friday at 11:59 p.m. Remember, with discussion boards, there are no extensions because your late work impacts your classmates. So there are no extensions on discussion boards. So make sure that initial post is done by Friday at 11:59 p.m. And then by Sunday, come back and do your 3 reply posts to 3 of your classmates, making sure that you choose 3 of their taglines and explain why these taglines work, and choose 3 of their taglines that don't work and explain why they don't work. Again, develop strong rationales every time you write about what you're designing or what you're creating. All right. Any questions?
So far, none.
Okay. So if you're watching this on the archive and you have a question as you're starting to work on the assignments, maybe you're struggling with finding research, or you're not sure how to get into the library databases, or you're not quite sure of what I said in the feedback on your testimonial ads, call me on the phone during office hours. Shoot me a message through the FSO platform and I'll get right back to you. I'm really good about making sure you have everything you need and supporting you so that you can do your best work. Okay, so let me know if you have any questions, and I'll turn off the recording now.